After having a chance to review the Western Illinois film, certainly pleased with the outcome, pleased with the victory, but there is plenty to work on. Challenged our staff, challenged our team, challenging myself to be really objective with that evaluation and constructive in terms of, how we're going to move forward, how we're going to get better, how we're going to control what we can control. Incredible opportunity this weekend with Oregon coming into town, opening up Big Ten play. I'll tell you what, Coach Lanning has done an exceptional job at Oregon. Not only are they very talented, but they are incredibly well coached. There's not a single stone that will go unturned by him and his staff. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to try and apply pressure in a lot of different ways in all three phases. On top of being extremely talented, they are fundamentally sound. They're physical. They play hard. They finish plays. All you have to do is, certainly turn on the tape from last year, but turn on the tape from their first two games, and it doesn't take long to, find a profound, respect for the quality of a football team that they have and the task that we have right in front of us this Saturday.
Coach, do you have an update on Cam Porter's injury?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Cam's injury is going to result in his season being over, and all of us are crushed for Cam. There's no one that's worked harder. There's no one that's invested more in this program than Cam Porter. The thing that I'll also say is there is no one more suited and prepared to still have a profound impact on their team with these types of circumstances than Cam Porter. One thing that I've learned about Cam is, he understands that his purpose is bigger than football. He's a man that walks by faith and it's not just some cliche post or tattoo that he wears on his arm. It's something that he lives by and walks by. I learn from Cam Porter daily, and what I will tell you is every single room that Cam Porter steps into, that room, the people in that room are better because Cam's in it. And, he was in meetings this morning. He'll continue to be in meetings. He will continue to have a profound impact on this football program. And the last thing that I'll just share is, I don't know what the good Lord has in store for Cam long term. More football, professional life, but what I will tell you is, that dude's future is bright. Any NFL scout I've ever run into will tell you that he makes every room and every organization he's a part of better because he's a part of it. So crushed for him, and ultimately also excited for the impact he's still going to have on this football team, Matt.
Charlie. Coach, Caleb Komolafe now set to take a bigger role on. He's had career highs in carries and rushing yards in 2 consecutive weeks now. So what type of role do you see him taking, and overall throughout the first 2 weeks, what have you just seen out of him on the field?
Yeah, what we're starting to see on game day is what we've seen out of, Caleb in practice, not only in spring ball but in fall camp. Have been excited for his opportunity regardless of our depth in that room. His workload, Joe's workload, is certainly going to increase with the loss of Cam. But there's going to be other, young men in that room that are going to have to step up as well, and we've started to see that. And we're going to have to be solutions-based here, But I'll tell you what, the ball in Caleb Komolafe's hands, the ball in Joe Hyman's hands, those are things that we're excited about, and they're going to have to carry on a heavier load now with the loss of Cam for sure.
Do you see more of a role now for Anderson and Reeder possibly getting in the mix too?
We'll find out. They're going to have to earn that. But both those guys have shown a lot of promise, Dave. Reeder specifically is someone that we really challenged coming out of spring ball. And to his credit, he's answered that challenge. Has become someone we can really rely on special teams, and continues to show improvement at the running back position. Daniel, having less time here early and early in spring, but has been really consistent in his preparation. But but we're going to have to, we talk about developing the entire roster, and when your number's called, you better be ready. Well, here we are. Those guys are going to have to step up.
Yeah, Coach, jumping off that question a little bit, you mentioned Cam still being able to have an impact on this team with those young guys like Daniel and Deshaun. How helpful is it going to be for them to have Cam in their corner, letting them know what it takes to be a good running back in the Big Ten?
It's invaluable. I think, I don't know if Caleb stated this publicly or not. I think he has, but I think, Caleb Komalafe would be the first one to tell you that Cam's influence on him has had a tremendous impact on his ability to be where he's at right now. I know Cam already has had that impact. He'll continue to have that impact on those guys in that room. I know the impact he's had on our entire program. Especially, again, Cam never talks about it. He just does it. Like it's at meals, it's in meetings, it's catching guys outside the facility. Cam Porter has this unique ability to meet people where they're at and then also inspire them to reach their fullest potential. He does it in such a genuine, authentic, real way, and that won't ever change about him. I tell you what, he just I'm emotional because I'm feeling for Cam, but also just speaking truth that that dude will continue to be one of the best captains we've ever had and will continue to lead this football team.
Coach, Deuce McGuire got the start at right tackle last game. He started both of the games, but Martez actually had more snaps than him, just barely 39-32. But is that still indicative of an ongoing position battle, or was it merely situational and where you felt you were in that game?
I think it's indicative of both are doing some really good things and both still have room to improve. When you turn on the tape and you just watch the film, Deuce's effort and intentionality and the way that he prepares and his consistency are things that really stand out. And then, one of the early plays that Tez is in the game, just absolutely moves a defensive end, and all of a sudden that B gap goes from being, a decent running space to a huge running space for our back. Tez ultimately moves bodies in the run game. He's played a lot of Big Ten football. Between Martez and Deuce, we're going to have to continue to rely on both those guys and continue and just to figure out what that perfect match is. But without a doubt, both are going to have to play a lot of football for us.
Coach, obviously it's so soon after, but just wondering if there was a possibility that if Cam was granted a medical exception to have another year of college football, have you had any conversations with him about the possibility of coming back for another year playing more football after he returns from injury?
We haven't. I don't know what that looks like, to be very honest with you. But what I can tell you again, where I appreciate Cam Porter is it's Coach, I can't change what happened, but I can control how I approach today. When I spoke with him Saturday morning, I was shocked by just how positive and upbeat and just, hey, this is what I can focus on, Coach, so this is what I'm going to focus on. So that's how he's going to approach things. That's how we'll approach things as a program. Ultimately, my hope and prayer is that there is more football in Cam Porter's future. Again, there's no one that's worked harder, been more loyal to this program, been more committed to this program, and I know that will continue.
Coach, this is without a doubt, just at least on paper, the toughest conference opener you guys have had during your tenure here. How have you just seen in recent days, as you guys have gotten into prep, the group just start to embrace this challenge ahead?
Yeah, I think it's so much of just the way that this group has learned to operate in terms of our process and the standard. And I know those are cliche terms that all of us coaches utilize, but that's where our leadership has done such a great job this offseason, defining what the standard is and what it looks like. And even challenging our team this morning, we're going to acknowledge and respect our upcoming opponent. No different than, the way that we're going to approach a Western Illinois game from a standpoint of we're going to respect our opponent, we're going to understand what they do well, and we're going to prepare for that opponent. But what can we control? We can't control Oregon, but we can control the way that we go about our process and the standard that we adhere to. And I think our guys have a sense of ownership in that. No, we know what Monday is going to look like. We know what our prep's going to look like this afternoon. We know that Tuesday's practice is going to be a knockout, drag out. We're going to get after it. We're going to prepare ourselves for the arena in Big Ten football. And, this is what you want. The young men that are on this roster made a decision to come to Northwestern, because they believe it's the most unique opportunity in all of college football. an incredible degree that will serve them the rest of their life, an opportunity to compete and aspire to win Big Ten championships. And it's one thing to talk about it, but what are you doing to actually deliver on that? And what an incredible challenge that we have with Oregon, with our Big Ten opener. Again, in our prep over the summer, there was a tremendous amount of respect for what they do and how they do it. And you watch their first 2 games. I mean, it's like they're not leaving anything in the tank. I mean, this is a special football team that's really well coached and will present a ton of challenges for us. But that's something that this football team is embracing.
Coach, you mentioned the importance of recognizing what your opponent does well. What is it that you've seen from Oregon over their first 2 games that you think they do exceptionally well?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, we could be here for a long time. The things that really stand out offensively, I just think they're really well thought out. They allow their guys to play fast. They vary their tempos. They've found ways to create a ton of explosive plays. They start fast. I mean, that's been something that's been very consistent throughout Coach Lanning's time there, offensively starting really fast. Coming into it with a new quarterback this year, you'd think maybe there'd be, a fall off there. That certainly isn't the case. Their quarterback's playing at a really high level. They're utilizing all their weapons. They're lining them up in different places. Defensively, young in the back half, but very talented. They don't play young. Very veteran up front, 2 edges that are, special players, veteran linebacker group. You can tell that group's playing with a lot of confidence. And on special teams, sometimes when you face a team that's as talented as Oregon, maybe like special teams becomes an afterthought. They use it as an opportunity to use the skill that they have and be aggressive. They play in all 3 phases. Tremendous amount of respect for what those guys are doing.
Back here. Coach, like Jake said, like Audrey was talking about, this is a big stage for you guys. Lots of eyes on this game.
Yeah.
You got big new kickoffs coming. It's going to be on Fox. Is that something that energizes you guys, or is that more of noise that you guys are trying to block out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think during the week it's something you're trying to block out. You're just trying to focus on what you can control today. But I think it's also really important to acknowledge, no, this is exciting. This is why you play in the Big Ten. Big noon kickoff coming to campus. The students are back. We need Wild Side at a whole nother level. The lakefront needs to be packed with purple. We need to create a home field advantage. It may be a smaller venue, but it can still be an incredible advantage for the Cats. These are days that you dream of when you dream of playing college football. I think it's really important that we tune that out during the week, acknowledge it on Saturday, take a moment to take it in and say, yeah, this is awesome, and then focus on executing.
As you pointed out, Oregon's very talented. They've got some dudes, you could say, and definitely some dudes who'll be playing on Sunday. So I just wanted to get your quick take on these 4 guys from what you've seen. 76, Isaiah World, 31, Dylan Theineman, 18, Kenyon Sadiq, and then 10, the edge whose name I won't try to pronounce because I would offend everybody if I tried.
Yeah, but both edges are extremely talented. Stat lines, with those guys, you can't pay attention to the stat line. You just turn on the film, and both are super talented. I believe it was last week, maybe it was Montana State, but I think 10 had a 2-sack game. Both those guys are showing up on the edge. 18, I think you mentioned, they do such a good job at putting them at different spots, Wildcat quarterback, tight end, wide receiver. And again, it's so easy to say, oh, they're talented. Well, you watch 18 block, he finishes and he's physical. You can tell these guys are well coached and they bought in. You mentioned number 76. Correct me if I'm wrong, but transfer that recently got to Oregon.
Right, yeah, he came from the Mountain West.
Yeah, very impressive. Again, if we were to rewind to last January and say, where's Oregon going to be at next year? You'd say, the O-line is something that they're going to have to address, and they have. They really have. Been really impressed with that group and the continuity that they're playing with. I'm sorry, who was the 4th that you mentioned?
The Purdue transfer.
Oh, yeah, no, we're familiar with him. Really, really good player and super instinctual. Grant O'Brien, who's on staff with us now, actually coached Dylan at Purdue. From all accounts, not only a really good football player, but just is all about all the right things. And Oregon's lucky to have him.
You like seeing your backup quarterback throw a stiff arm like that on that touchdown?
I do. You know, I mean, that's Ryan. He's a competitor, multi-sport athlete. Really excited to see him in that opportunity. Make a decision to pull it, and then not only pick up a chunk yardage, but turn it into a touchdown. I think it's just reflective of the confidence that he's playing with. You know, the progression that we've seen out of Ryan throughout spring, throughout the summer, throughout fall camp. I think that one play embodies just the level of confidence that he's playing with right now.
Coach, obviously very different opponents, very different situations, but how much does a big win the week prior help boost the team's morale into the next week of practice and into the coming week?
Yeah, you know, I think ultimately, you know, we talk about our weekly mission. You know, last week for Western Illinois, it was prove it in the arena. You know, I mean, we certainly didn't prove it in week one. And regardless of FCS, FBS, I know I made a comment post-game. Like, my comment was coming from a place of a lot of my coaching career is at the FCS level, like a tremendous amount of respect for FCS, the level of football that's played. I thought Coach Davis has done a great job over the course of the last year and a half. There's a level of confidence building within our group. You know, Hayden Elegant has his first career college touchdown. Hunter Welsing as a vet has his first career college touchdown. Ryan Bowe has his first career, college touchdown. Like, there's guys that haven't played a ton of college football that are, starting to sense like, okay, this is what it feels like on game day to see success. And then there's an acknowledgement of being objective of like, okay, here's all the positive things, but there's a lull late in the first quarter and the second quarter where we're not operating offensively the way that we need to. There's an acknowledgement defensively at the end of the game that regardless of who's playing, our expectation is to get off the field and get stops. There's things within our special teams game where we're leaving yards out on the field in terms of our punt return. So just finding this balance of acknowledging the things that should build our confidence, but also not, hiding behind the fact that we won by a large margin and that everything's okay. There's a lot of work to be done.
Charlie, Coach, coming off a really great defensive performance, rewatching the film, what kind of stood out to you about that performance, and what really needs to translate to this coming weekend?
I think Coach McGarlow did an incredible job of on a short week of just putting our guys in situations where they could play fast and play with a ton of confidence and get all 11 on the same page. I think the thing that stood out most was just like our overall demeanor of play at all three levels. Still plenty to clean up. It's definitely shown up on tape that, Garner and Rob Fitz back at the safety position are just such critical pieces to what we're doing. Excited about the way that back half is really coming together. Braden Turner had a huge pass breakup that led to an interception for Mac. Dylan Tatum, saw some more time at defense, which was really encouraging, playing well. We're going to have to continue to lean into our depth with the defensive line. Our ability to get pressure on the quarterback, like sometimes we get so tied up in the sack numbers, but we were disruptive in affecting the quarterback. That's something that needs to continue to show up and will certainly be a huge challenge for us this week against Oregon.
Coach, do you have an injury update on Frank Covey? And then also saw Luke Akers seem to maybe pull something on the sidelines. Is there any injury designation for him?
Luke's full go. Just had a cramping issue, like nothing at all long term. Frank's going to be day to day here, but like very optimistic that Frank will be back here sooner than later.
You mentioned with Frank being out of the lineup, it kind of promoted guys like Hayden, like Chase into seeing some more regular snaps. What did you see from them in that elevated playing time?
Yeah, it was really fun to see Hayden step up, and not just in the passing game, but blocking him. He's just such a big physical presence. Has put on a lot of lean muscle mass this offseason. He's really grown up and matured. Really encouraged by that. And then, Chase is someone that we're going to have to continue to find ways to get to the ball, get the ball. He had his fumble. That's something that he'll flush. It's behind us. It was good for Chase to get maybe some of those early game jitters out, but he's someone that we're going to lean on and going to have to utilize a ton this year, and excited for him to continue to grow and improve.
Yeah, Coach, one of the things you mentioned that Oregon did really well was explosive plays. The defense did a great job of limiting that against Western Illinois. They had one play of longer than 15, and it was that receiver reverse pass. You talked about situations, putting your defense in to make them succeed. How do you make sure that you put them in similar situations last week as this week?
Yeah, Oregon's going to make it really difficult. The way that they structure, their plan early in the game, the way that they tempo, the way that they utilize their personnel, the quarterbacks playing at a really high level. And like there's this balance of like, okay, we need to limit explosives. Well, Oregon's done a really good job of also just being efficient and staying ahead of the sticks and not giving up TFLs and not allowing their opponents to get them behind the sticks. Like that's where the challenge really presents itself. At what point defensively do you start to get more aggressive to, make sure you position yourself on third down to have an advantageous third down? And Coach Lanning will be very aggressive on fourth down as well to eventually, get off the field. Yeah, it's easy to talk about how critical those things are. Against these guys, it'll be much more difficult to execute. But there is one thing that's very evident. They have been very explosive on offense. And, if we expect to win and to play winning football on defense, we're going to have to limit those explosives.
Adam?
Coach, after Western Illinois, you mentioned how Preston kind of got into him that doesn't have to do everything.
Yeah.
Against a team like Oregon, where maybe, depending on the game situation, might feel like a little bit more pressure, how do you keep him grounded?
Yeah, ultimately, it just starts with, the relationship between him and Coach Lujan and him and I and his teammates. And ultimately just all of that comes from a great place. Like he's a competitor. He wants to do everything for his team. He wants to play a huge factor in helping this team, achieve and ultimately win every weekend. But it's also just reminding him that efficient plays are good plays. A check down, I forget at what point it was in the game, but they're in cover 2. He checks it down to Cam. I think it went from a 3rd and 10 to 4th and 1, or maybe a 2nd and long to 3rd and 2. But those are good plays. They're not always flashy, but just continuing to remind them of that, and ultimately, understanding we talk about trusting yourself in this program, but also trusting your teammates that our own line's going to create opportunities for us to run the football, and as we run the football, it'll open up opportunities in the play action game. The shot to Griffin Wilde is a direct reflection of our efficiency in the run game. So, you never want to take an ultimate competitor that believes in himself as he should believe in himself and take that out of him. It's just a reminder to him of ultimately you are well supported, man. Not every play needs to be perfect. Efficient plays are good plays.
Coach, you talk a lot about playing complementary football, but with a team like Oregon that can score just like that, it's very easy to get away from that. How do you maintain kind of your identity as a team while also understanding that in order to beat a team like Oregon, a top team in the nation, you have to be really aggressive?
Yeah, no, we're gonna have to score points. That's very clear. How do you do that in a strategic way that positions the offense to finish drives with touchdowns? And ultimately doesn't expose your defense to more snaps than you would want. Ultimately, the thought of Oregon's offense having, 85 snaps in a game, that's a scary thought. We just, it all has to tie together. But the biggest mistake you can make is become so passive that you don't even allow your offense an opportunity to find ways to score points. We've started those discussions already. It's going to have to be something that between all 3 phases as a coaching staff we're super aligned with, not even on Saturday, but as we go throughout the week of practice.
Couple more, Audrey?
Coach, I'm sure you're solely focused on the Oregon game, but do you have any reaction to President Schill's resignation? I know he had said back when your interim tag was dropped that you two had gotten to know each other a little bit, so I just wanted to ask. Yeah,
changes in leadership are hard. The things that I will acknowledge are the things that I absolutely know to be true. Without his support, I wouldn't hold this position. I'm incredibly appreciative of the opportunity that I have, and that's something that he ultimately had to make a decision on. I'm incredibly grateful for, Northwestern Medicine Field at Martin Stadium and being able to play on the lakefront these last 2 years. Without his support, that doesn't happen. We did get to share time together in some really trying times. It's a lesson. I'll just be really honest with you. It was a lesson for, my young boys, 8 and 10 years old. As we navigated a really difficult time of, our family moved across the country. Huge reason why we decided to move was to work for Coach Fitz. And now I'm getting asked a lot of hard questions from young kids, and ultimately it was a lesson for them that hey, boys, you can disagree with the decision that, is made, but you can also be willing to enter into conversations of where you can find common ground. And, the conversations that President Schill and I had over those months in my interim time were critical to positioning our program to focus on making sure that our 2023 team had an opportunity to write their own story and go have a really successful season. So leadership change is hard, provides some opportunity, but we'll certainly acknowledge the fact that I'm grateful for the opportunity that he gave me to hold this position.
You mentioned Hunter Welsing catching his first career touchdown. That's a guy who's been with this program since 2020, local guy. So I was just wondering if you could shine a little light on him and the work that he puts in that allowed him to finally get that moment here at Northwestern.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, Hunter's been through a lot, and just stayed the course. It was probably 2 weeks ago. He was a little frustrated, a little dinged up, frustrated that he hadn't been able to practice as consistently as he wanted to throughout fall camp. Nothing major, but he knows this is his time. I was like, buddy, this is your year, man. And to see that come to fruition is pretty special. I'm so excited for what he's going to be able to provide our team, not just these last 2 weeks, but for the remainder of this season. But it is a credit to his mental toughness, his physical toughness, his perseverance. He's been through a lot. And there's a lot of young men that would have said, you know what, I'm good. And he stayed the course. Being a local guy, huge hockey background. Football was somewhat new to him when he first got to Northwestern, newer compared to most of the guys that we have here. He's really coming into his own.
Last year, you guys got the chance to go on the road and play against Washington. I'm just curious from that experience, how real is that element of travel fatigue or travel adjustment that Oregon might have to face when they come across the country to play here in the Midwest?
It's one of those things that, as a support staff and a head coach, you try and exhaust, and look at every single thing you possibly can that could factor into positively or negatively impacting your performance. But at the end of the day, it's only going to have as much impact as you allow it to have. To put so much focus on it that it's part of your mindset or part of what you're thinking about, you're distracting yourself. Ultimately, yeah, it's going to be really hard, but we still have to do it. When we travel out to USC and play on a Friday night, is there things that are, inconvenient about that? Sure, but we still have to do it. Time to go compete. And everything that I know about Coach Lanning, excuses, explanations, that's not part of his program. They're going to find a way to prepare themselves and make sure that they're at their best for an 11 o'clock kick.
Brandon?
Yeah, Coach, you talked about making sure that Oregon gets behind the sticks, that they don't have that efficient 5-6 yards on first down. Front seven's done a pretty good job at that. Mac, Carmine, Aiden, they've done a good job at that. How does that experience of, having a year in the Big Ten already where they were key guys on the defensive front help going up against a team like this, knowing that they have the experience and the talent level to make some of those big defensive plays and get Oregon behind schedule?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, and it's not just the scheme, it's not just the opposition in terms of the speed and physicality that you're seeing, but it's also when they start to get tempo and having experienced that before, just calm, communicative guys that can just keep our poise, get all 11 on the same page. Will be a critical element to our success.
Coach, there's a lot of preseason hype for Anto Saka as an every down defensive end or impact defensive end. He just has one tackle and one hurry through 2 games, hasn't played a majority of snaps in a game yet. How do you assess his play so far and get him going this season?
Yeah, turn on the tape from Western Illinois. I mean, extremely disruptive. I don't put a ton of I don't know how quarterback hurries are tallied. I'll tell you right now, having played defensive end, you start chasing sacks, you're not going to be playing good football. A lot of times, a clean win on the edge doesn't result in a sack. It results in a disruption where a quarterback steps up and someone else has an opportunity. I think Anto needs to continue to focus and has continued to focus on what he can control and what we're seeing on tape at practice. And, specifically the last week and a half is him playing at the highest level he's played at since he's been here. Those stats will naturally start to accumulate.
Last one, Jake.
Coach, last game you had 2 transfers in the back half making a significant impact in Fred Davis and Dylan Tatum. What have you seen from them just in terms of both their adjustment to Coach McGargle's scheme and the presence they've brought into the secondary?
Yeah, it's not easy to make that adjustment. I mean, we put a lot on those guys, but both have done a tremendous job. Dylan had to get started this summer. Fred had the opportunity in spring quarter to get going on it. Both have taken full advantage of that, spending extra time with coaches, doing what they need to do to get up to speed. I still think you see some elements of, like, you saw a great progression for Fred from week 1 to week 2, and that needs to continue. Dylan, even in his preparation, he earned his opportunities to play in week 2 because he had a better week of practice. That progression needs to continue. We're going to have to lean on those guys and lean on that depth in that room. The thing that I'm most impressed with by both is just their, like, unwavering buy-in and commitment to this program. Those two are not about themselves. They're about this team, and that's something that Dylan Tatum, I don't know if it was the opening kickoff, but makes a huge play on kickoff. He's having a huge impact on our special teams as well.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thanks, everyone.